In our last episode, we learnt about ASI loaders, Clio, limit adjusters, and we also installed the essential mods necessary to make San Andreas stable, which will enable us to modify our game even further. This episode will probably be the longest of the entire guide, as we're going to do the following. We're going to download, install, and set up mod tools. We're going to do a simple exercise and create a basic mod. This will give you an even better understanding of how the game works, and it'll teach you about the game's IMG archives, texture files, and model files. We'll also go through how the item placement, item definition, and data files work in the game. And lastly, while doing all of the following above, we'll be able to go in depth with ModLoader, which should help you understand how it works and how you can use it best when modding your game. Now, I don't expect you to remember everything from this part of the guide. At the very least, I only expect you to get a vague idea by the end. So don't panic if you find it overwhelming and too much. However, this part of the guide will be a vital resource once you start modding on your own. It'll be a resource you can always go back to refresh your memory on the game's file formats and how ModLoader works. With that out of the way, welcome to the third episode of the Ultimate Modding Guide for San Andreas. So first, I'm going to give you two tools to download. Links to both tools will be in the description. One is an IMG editor called IMG Factory. This will allow you to open the game's IMG archives. IMG Factory installs in your program files x86 folder on your C drive. You'll find this tool there. There's a bit of a problem with this tool that we'll have to fix after you install, but it's simple enough to do. Another tool we have to download is a TXT editor called Magic TXT. This allows us to open TXT archives, which contains the game's textures. Make sure you download the correct version depending on your PC. Chances are you're on Windows 7 or newer, so download the Win 7 Plus version. Make sure when installing Magic TXT, you at least have these three options ticked. Start menu shortcuts is completely up to you. This just adds shortcuts for Magic TXT to your start menu. Magic TXT allows you to select where you want to install, so you should know yourself where it is. By default, it should be in your normal program files folder on your C drive. So like I said, IMG Factory has one small issue. It crashes when launched, but don't worry, it's easily fixed. While there's a few IMG editors out there, none come even close to the capabilities of IMG Factory. The tool had even bigger plans, but unfortunately, development has stopped. But for editing IMG archives, the tool is basically complete for 99% of users. I wouldn't recommend using another IMG tool. The majority of them are old and outdated. So, IMG Factory crashes when your PC is connected to the internet. I assume this is something to do with the update checking feature, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, we can simply block the application from the internet using Windows Firewall. It's simple enough. So, step 1. Open Windows Search and simply type Firewall and click on Windows Defender Firewall. The name might be changed in the future considering Windows Defender has been renamed itself, so be aware of that. Step 2. Click Advanced Settings. Step 3. Once you're in Advanced Settings, click Outbound Rules. Then click New Rule on the right hand side. A new window should open. Step 4. Select Program as the type of rule. Click Next. Click on this program path. Click Browse and then locate and select your IMG Factory.exe file. Once done, click Next. Step 5. Select Block the connection. Click Next. Make sure these three are ticked, and then click Next again. And lastly, step 6. Name the rule. Just name it IMG Factory. For the description, I just leave a quick note saying why I did this, in case I ever come back here in the future and forget why I blocked the tool. And that's it. IMG Factory should now launch with no problems now. Now, we have our mod tools installed. We'll be using them in a few to do a simple exercise. But first, let's learn about some of the file types in San Andreas and what they are for. So to learn about some of the file types San Andreas uses, let's head to our game folder. The models folder contains almost all of the game's assets. The only assets not here are the game's audio and some of the animation files, which are instead located in the audio and anim folders. So let's head into the game's models folder. As you can see, we mostly have files ending in .img and .txt. So what are the files ending in .img? These are IMG archives, and most of the game's assets are stored in IMG archives. They require a tool to open them, such as IMG Factory. IMG archives can contain almost any of the game's file types, including textures, models, collisions, and so on. Files are stored in IMG archives for optimization reasons, essentially improving the speed in which assets could be moved from the disk the game came on. Optimization like this wouldn't really be required in a game like San Andreas on modern hardware, but this was necessary on 2004 hardware when the game released. Like I said before, most of the game's assets, other than the audio and some animation files, are stored in the models folder. The majority of these assets are in the IMG archives in the models folder. I'll quickly go over what's in each IMG archive here. GTA3.img is the main IMG archive. It's the biggest and contains nearly all of the game's assets. You'll find map assets, vehicle assets, weapon assets, and so on here. The textures that make up the in-game minimap are also located in this archive. GTA_int.img contains assets for the interiors in the game. That's what INT stands for in the archive name, interior. Cutscene.img contains assets used exclusively during the cutscenes in the game. Player.img contains assets used for the player model. So all of the assets related to CJ and character customization are in this archive. Now, what about these .txt files? .txt files are what we called TXT archives, or texture archives. These archives contain images that are also known as textures. The textures are stored in archives for optimization reasons, the same reason why IMG archives exist. Textures are usually compressed when put into TXT archives as well, also for optimization. Textures are the visual makeup of the game. They're used for the HUD, the pause menu, effects, 3D models, and more. Most of the game's TXT archives are located inside the IMG archives. However, as you can see, some of them are just placed directly in the models folder and its subfolders. Some notable TXT archives directly in the models folder are HUD.txt. This contains the majority of the textures used in the game's heads-up display. Particle.txt and EffectsPC.txt. These contain the game's 2D effects, such as fire and so on. Fonts.txt. This contains the textures for the font the game uses. There's also some TXT archives in the generic, grass, and TXT subfolders. The generic folder contains some TXT archives which has generic textures for vehicles, such as license plate textures and wheels. The grass folder contains a single TXT archive which contains the textures used for the dynamic grass which appears at higher visual FX settings. And lastly, the TXT folder contains TXT archives which have all of the game's load screen art. The rest of the game's TXT archives are located in the IMG archives, and those TXT archives mostly contain textures for the game's models. Models are basically all of the 3D parts of the game, like vehicles, weapons, characters, buildings, and so on. Models have the .dff file format, and the majority of these files are also stored in the IMG archives. Textures, which again are basically just images, are essentially mapped out and painted onto the game's models. Here's a comparison of a model with and without textures. The information required to know exactly which TXT archive the model needs a texture from is located in an item definition file, which we'll go into later. The information required to know the exact texture the model needs from that TXT archive, however, is located directly in the .dff file. .dff files, as well as being the visual models we see throughout the game, also contain data for other things you'll see in game. Here's the major ones. .dff files contain the data for 2D FX attached to the specific model. This is mostly used for lights, also known as coronas, but it can also be used for other effects that are attached to models. .dff files contain the data for PED attractors. These are used to make NPCs interact with models, such as making NPCs sit on a bench or make them look into the window of a shop. .dff files contain the data for the model's pre-lighting. This lighting can be different for daytime and nighttime, and it swaps between the two depending on the time of day in-game. I won't go too much into editing models yourself, as you need experience with 3D modeling, which I haven't really got. Anyone who has got experience can find several resources online about importing San Andreas models into modeling software like 3ds Max and Blender. Okay, so let's use our mod tools and do a simple exercise like I mentioned earlier. For this exercise, I want you to make and install a simple placeholder mod, and we're going to install it without using ModLoader. This mod will be ridiculous, but don't worry, we'll be deleting it after. I'll instruct you through everything obviously. I don't expect you to go around making mods after this, as this guide is primarily focused on learning how to download and install mods yourself. But the main goal of this exercise is to teach you how ModLoader works, make you familiar with some mod tools, and also give you an even further idea of the San Andreas file structure. This will make you more capable at installing mods to your game, as you'll have a better understanding overall of how San Andreas works. Okay, so first off, step 1. Download 5 images that I made specifically for this video. I'll leave a link in the description. Once downloaded, you can put these images on your desktop. We'll only be using 4 of them right now, but we'll need the other one for later too. Step 2. Create a folder on your desktop called Backup. Step 3. Go to your Models folder in your main San Andreas folder, and we're going to back up 3 files. So select hud.txt, player.img, and gta3.img, and then copy and paste them into the backup folder on your desktop. We'll need these later, so make sure you don't delete them. Step 4. Create another folder on your desktop and call it TJGM Video. Step 5. Go back to your Models folder and copy hud.txt to the TJGM Video folder on your desktop. Step 6. Open hud.txt in the TJGM Video folder with MagicTXT. MagicTXT should already be the default application to open .txt archives, so you can just double click on the file itself. As you can see, this is full of different HUD textures, mostly radar icons. Scroll down to the very bottom of the texture list and you should see a texture called Fist. Pretty self-explanatory. It's the fist icon used in the top right of the screen when you have no weapons equipped. This is going to be the texture we'll be replacing. Step 7. Select the fist texture, click the Edit menu, then click Replace. Head to your desktop and find the images you downloaded earlier, and then select the fist green image. Step 8. In the Replace window, you don't really need to know much about all of these options unless you're properly making mods. Just make sure the texture name is set to the same as the one you're replacing, which it should be by default. So let's just ignore everything else and hit the Replace button in the bottom right. As you can see, the texture has now been replaced in the TXT archive with our own texture. Step 9. Click File and then save the changes you've made to the TXT archive. Let's move on to the next texture we're going to replace for our mod. Go back to your Models folder. We're going to extract a TXT archive from an IMG archive. By default, IMG Factory doesn't associate itself with IMG file types, so you have to set it manually in Windows. So, step 10, right-click on any IMG archive, click Properties, and then in the General tab in the Properties window, go to the Opens With option and click Change. Then just find the IMG Factory exe and set it as the default application for this file type. Chances are it won't be in this list for you, so find the option to look for another app not on the list, and then find and select your IMG Factory executable. Step 11. Open GTA3.img in the Models folder with IMG Factory. It might take a second to open as it's a big archive. Step 12. Once open, go to the search box in the bottom right and type jeffers4_lae.txt. Then click Find. Step 13. Click the TXT archive in the bottom right search results that matches your search, and then click the Export button. Export the TXT archive to your TJGM video folder on your desktop. We need another TXT archive from this IMG archive too. So, step 14. Search for the file gta_3_palm.txt, and again, click the TXT archive in the bottom right search results that matches, and then click the Export button, also exporting this TXT archive to your TJGM video folder. For now, you can close IMG Factory and go back to your TJGM video folder on the desktop, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. Step 15. Open the jeffers4_lae.txt archive first with Magic_TXT. Look for the texture named backalley1_lae. Step 16. Once you find it, click the texture, click Edit, and then click Replace. Navigate to the images on your desktop, select the image called backalley_red, and then click Replace in the Replace window. Save the TXT archive after replacing the texture. Step 17. Open the GTA_3_palm.txt archive with Magic_TXT. Look for the texture named Plant A256. Click the texture and then click Replace. Navigate to the images on your desktop, select the image called Plant A Red, and then click Replace. Save the TXT archive after replacing the texture. Okay, we're going to do this one more time, except this time we need a texture from the player.img archive. So, step 18. Open up player.img in the Models folder, search for the file vest.txt, click Export and export it to the TJGM video folder. Close IMG Factory once you've exported the TXT archive and go to your TJGM video folder. Step 19. Just like before, open the vest.txt archive with Magic.txt. There's only one texture in this archive, simply called Vest. Click the texture, click Replace, navigate to the images on your desktop, and select the image called Vest Red. And then click Replace. Save the TXT archive after replacing the texture. Okay, so what you just did there was make a basic texture mod. Now, we're going to install the mod first without mod loader, and then we'll install our mod with mod loader, just so you can see the difference in the two methods. So imagine you're just a normal user, you just downloaded our mod called TJGM Video. Mod loader doesn't exist, and you want to install the modded textures you just downloaded. How do you do it? Well, first, we'll install our new HUD.txt, which contains our fancy new fist icon. To do so, simply copy the HUD.txt file from the TJGM video folder to your San Andreas models folder, replacing the original HUD.txt when asked. After this, we need to edit IMG archives, which get a bit more complicated. So, step 1. Open the GTA3.img archive in the models folder. Step 2. This time, click on the Replace button. Navigate to the TJGM video folder, and then select the Jeffers4_lae.txt file and the GTA3 pom.txt file. When asked if you want to replace two entries, simply select Yes. This will import the modded TXT archives from the TJGM video folder into the IMG archive, replacing the original files in the IMG archive. Step 3. Once done, click the Rebuild button and let the archive rebuild. This is important, as making changes to IMG archives and not rebuilding them can cause issues with your game. Once the archive is rebuilt, you can close IMG Factory. Next, we'll install our Vest texture. Step 1. So open the player.img archive in the models folder with IMG archive. Step 2. Click the Replace button, navigate to our TJGM video folder, and then select the vest.txt file. When asked if you want to replace, select Yes. Step 3. And lastly, click on Rebuild to rebuild the archive when you're done. Okay, and that's it. We just made a very basic mod using my images as textures, and we installed them without mod loader. Now before we check if it worked, I should just clarify that you won't actually be installing mods this way. Mod loader makes this process much easier, as we're going to see in a minute. But the point of this simple exercise was so you'd have a better understanding of IMG archives, TXT archives, and mod loader itself, as you'll soon see. Anyway, launch your game, start a new game, and check out the changes in effect. As you can see, the fist icon has been replaced with our green fist icon in the top right. This was the changes we made in HUD.txt. The vest on CJ now has a red tint over it. This was the changes we made in vest.txt in player.img. And lastly, the ground in the alley is now a shade of red, and the palm trees in the distance are also a shade of red. These were the changes we made to Jeffers4_lae.txt and GTA_3_pom.txt in GTA3.img. Okay, so the changes we made worked, and don't worry, we're not keeping them. Go to the backup folder on your desktop, which contains the 3 backup files, and put them back into your models folder, replacing the modified files when asked. You can delete the backup folder after this if you want. So if you just launch your game again and start a new game, you'll see everything is back to normal, as we've replaced our changes with the original game files. You can close your game after checking this. Now we're going to install our modified textures again, but this time we're going to do it using mod loader. So instead of making backups, opening IMG archives, replacing files, and rebuilding IMG archives every time you want to install the majority of mods, mod loader makes this much easier. So let's install our textures using ModLoader and I'll show you what I mean. Step 1. Open the ModLoader folder in your San Andreas folder. Step 2. Copy the TJGM video folder from your desktop to the ModLoader folder. And that's literally it. We just installed our custom textures. Launch your game and check for yourself. The textures will now appear just like they did when we directly replaced the files. That's basically what ModLoader does. It detects files you put into your ModLoader folder and will load them instead of the original game files. This is the way mods should be installed with ModLoader. ModLoader, mod folder, mod files. ModLoader won't load files that aren't in a mod folder, so make sure you put them inside a folder, typically named after the mod. On top of this, as you've just seen, it can load individual files outside of their respective IMG archives too. So a TXT archive that normally exists in an IMG archive can be loaded without touching the IMG archive by loading it via ModLoader instead. ModLoader for San Andreas can load every single file type that the game uses. This includes ASI plugins, as you know, and Clio scripts. Now, like I said in the last video, not all ASI plugins will work when installed with ModLoader. This is rare though. The majority of ASI plugins will work when installed with ModLoader, but older plugins, especially those that might require their own additional files, aren't always guaranteed to work. So, just a recap regarding ASI plugins. ASI plugins can be installed in 3 different locations. The main game folder. You can just drag and drop files ending with .asi here. This is the safest location and is guaranteed to work all of the time. If you have issues with an ASI plugin not working, try to install it in your main game folder first, as the issue is possibly that. The scripts folder. I typically don't use this folder once I have ModLoader installed, as ASI plugins that work in the scripts folder will also work in the ModLoader folder, so I place them there instead. The ModLoader folder. This is where I install most of my ASI plugins, as it's much better for organization. Again, not every ASI plugin will work when installed this way, same as the scripts folder, but that's a rare issue. Usually, the mods that won't work will also contain some other mod-specific files that the ASI plugin expects to be in the main game directory, although that's not always the case. It's a rare issue, but just keep it in mind like I said before. Most ASI plugins will work when installed inside ModLoader, but if not, install them in the main game folder. ASI mods installed inside ModLoader still need to follow the correct folder layout, so install ASI mods inside ModLoader the same way we've installed Silent Patch, Widescreen Fix, and Open Limit Adjuster. They won't work if they're not inside mod folders. Clio scripts can also be installed inside ModLoader, just like ASI plugins. However, there's also a very small chance some scripts won't work, and they'll need to be installed in the Clio folder instead. We haven't actually installed any Clio scripts, but we'll also do that in the next video. A lot of file types can also be installed or tweaked during gameplay when loaded via ModLoader. Tweaking mods with the game running, if you don't know what you're doing, will likely cause crashes, especially with a lot of mods installed, or tweaking bigger mods that contain data files. It's just very likely you'll run into a compatibility issue. This is no fault of ModLoader, it's just how it is. I'd recommend only installing model or texture mods with the game running. This feature is very helpful for smaller mods that you might just want to check out without restarting the game. Obviously, ASI plugins and Clio scripts can't be installed or uninstalled with the game running. This feature is mostly for models, textures, map placement files, map definition files, audio files, and some data files. We'll learn more about San Andreas file formats soon. Okay, I know you're probably sick of the explanations at this point, and you want me to move on to installing more mods, but there's still a bit more to ModLoader that we should cover. ModLoader has a feature called Priorities, and this feature allows you to change the priority of each mod installed within ModLoader. A lot of people don't seem to understand how this works, so let's go through it. This feature is used when you have multiple mods installed that modify the same files as each other. Every mod by default has a priority of 50. A mod can have a priority between 1 and 100. If a mod has a priority of 0, the mod won't be loaded. If a mod has a higher priority than another mod and they replace the same file, the file which is part of the mod with the higher priority will be used, instead of the file which is part of the mod with the lower priority. A higher value means a higher priority, so a mod with a priority of 60 will be prioritized over a mod with a priority of 50. You will basically never need to change the priority of ASI plugins or Clio scripts installed with ModLoader. It makes basically no difference. If you're getting crashes with an ASI or Clio mod, changing the priority won't fix it. Anyway, it might seem a bit confusing at first, but we're going to put it into practice with the textures we've just made. Let's give it a go. Step 1. Go back to your ModLoader folder and create a new folder called Green Texture. Step 2. Open the TJGM video folder, which contains your modified textures. Copy the vest.txt file and paste it into the green texture folder. Step 3. Open the TXT archive we just pasted in the green texture folder with Magic.txt like we've done before. And once again, replace the vest texture with the vest green image you downloaded to your desktop earlier. Don't forget to save after you replace the texture. So now you have a vest.txt with a red vest, this is in the TJGM video folder, and a vest.txt with a green vest, this is in the green texture folder. Both of these mods replace the same file, which is vest.txt. Step 4. Open your modloader.ini file inside the modloader folder. You can open this with Notepad or any other text editor. Step 5. Under the Profiles Default Priority section, type green texture equals 51. Once you entered the value, save the file. This means that the vest.txt file inside the green texture folder will be used over the one in the TJGM video folder, as the green texture folder has a higher priority. Like I said before, by default, all mods have a priority of 50 unless you specifically give it a value like we just did here. Step 6. Launch your game and check if it works. You should now see a green vest instead of the red vest we had before, because the priority of the green texture folder is higher than the priority of the TJGM video folder. Before you close your game, ModLoader actually has an in-game menu located in the pause menu. This allows you to change the priority of mods directly from the menu, but like I said, messing with mods while the game is running is prone to crashing, especially mods that contain data files. However, for the mods we just made, it should be fine. So let's give it a quick go. Go into the pause menu, Options, and click on Modifications. You should see a list of your ModLoader mods there. Just to note, the Modifications menu allows you to type in keywords to search for your mods, as seen in the bottom right. This can be useful if you have quite a few mods installed. If you want to try this feature, just start typing when on this menu. Anyway, let's go back to using the red vest we have in the TJGM video mod. Click into the TJGM video mod, go to Priority, and increase the priority to 52. This should overwrite the vest.txt located in the green texture folder, as the priority for that mod is now lower than the priority for the TJGM video mod. Exit the menu and take a look in game. You should see the red vest from the TJGM video mod is being used instead now. Keep in mind, after you use the in-game ModLoader menu, the modloader.ini file will actually change and lose the descriptions, but it functions the exact same. Most of the time, I'd recommend just changing mod priorities directly from modloader.ini with a text editor before you even launch the game, but for smaller mods, it's fine to use the in-game menu. You can now delete the TJGM video and green texture folders inside your modloader folder. Once you've done that, open modloader.ini again and remove the two lines for the priorities for those mods. There's an important thing to know about priorities. We haven't covered it yet, but ModLoader can also load IMG archives, and some mods that add a lot of really high resolution textures will place the textures inside IMG archives for optimization reasons, instead of just giving ModLoader thousands of large files to load. But you should know that IMG archives will always have a lower priority in ModLoader than files loaded outside of IMG archives in ModLoader. For example, on the left, I have the AK47.txt texture archive inside ModLoader. I've replaced a texture inside this TXT archive, which now makes the AK green. On the right, I have a copy of the GTA3.img archive inside ModLoader. Inside this IMG archive, I've replaced the AK47.txt texture archive with my own one, except with this one, I've replaced a texture inside this TXT archive, which makes the AK red. If we take a look inside my modloader.ini, I've changed the priority of both of these folders. I've made the AK47 texture red folder have a priority of 60, and I've made the AK47 texture green folder have a priority of 55. This means that ModLoader will prioritize the red texture folder over the green texture folder. However, if we take a look in-game, the green texture is still being used, despite the red texture having a higher priority. Again, this is what I mean when I say IMG archives will always have a lower priority in ModLoader over individual files. If we remove the AK47.txt texture archive from the IMG archive, so the red texture folder now looks like this, you'll see that the red texture is now there, as the folder has a higher priority over the green texture folder, and the texture archive isn't in an IMG archive. It's just something to know about, as the biggest texture mod for San Andreas, which we'll discuss later in this guide, uses IMG archives for optimization. Now, you're probably wondering what the point of all that was, why I made you make a small mod, why we installed it two different ways, and so on. But having the knowledge to do the things we just did will help you learn and grasp things much quicker, and will help in the long run when modding San Andreas. You now know what models are, you know what textures are, you understand TXT archives better, you know how to open and edit them, you know what IMG archives are and how to open and edit the files in them, and you have a much better understanding of how ModLoader helps and of ModLoader's features. I know it might be tedious, but like I said, it really will help you in the long run. Okay, some more file formats. I don't expect you to do anything here, just listen up. Like I said at the start of the video, I don't expect you to understand all of this right away, or even make use of this information. But it's very good to know, and it will be a great resource to go back to when you start modding San Andreas on your own. It's very likely you'll run into these file formats when modding San Andreas, and you might not understand how they work or what they're doing. So coming back to this part of the guide will be very helpful later on. Okay, so IPL and IDE files. Inside the data folder, there's a folder called maps, and within this folder and its subfolders is where you'll find all of the game's IDE files and most of the game's IPL files. The files in the maps folder can all be opened with a basic text editor such as Notepad. The rest of the game's IPL files are actually stored in GTA3.img. These IPL files are in binary and can't be opened with a basic text editor. They need to be converted first. These are basically the exact same as normal IPL files anyway. So let's start with IPL files. This is an IPL file, which is short for Item Placement File. Like I said previously, normal IPL files located in the Maps folder can be opened with any type of text editor. The main purpose of IPL files are to place objects on the map. So when you see a model on the map, the data telling the game the coordinates to place that model on the map is stored in an IPL file. They also have sections which contain coordinates for other things, such as the enter and exit teleports around the map, as well as garage locations. They also contain a section called Cull. These are used to create invisible blocks around the map, which trigger different behavior if the player is in the block, depending on the block's flags. For example, there's multiple blocks under this construction site with the flag to disable the rain effects when the player is inside the blocks. There's also a block around the military base which automatically gives the player 5 stars if they enter the block. There's more flags for the cult section, but you get the idea of how they work. There's more sections inside IPL files for other things. If you really want to read more about them, you can check out the IPL page on the GTA Mods wiki. IPL files can be loaded with ModLoader. So for instance, if you were to copy any IPL files from here, edit them, and put them in ModLoader, ModLoader will load your edited IPL files instead. IDE files are item definition files. These are used to assign a model to a unique object ID, and they tell the model which TXT archive it needs textures from. The draw distance for objects is also set here, as well as some other flags. Just like IPL files, there's different sections in IDE files. For example, there's a section for timed objects. These are map objects that appear only during specific in-game times. These are the night windows that appear on Los Santos buildings at night. The time is defined here at the end. They appear at 8 PM and disappear at 6 AM in-game time. IDE files can be loaded with ModLoader. So for instance, if you were to copy any IDE files from here, edit them, and put them in ModLoader, ModLoader will load your edited IDE files instead. If we look directly in the data folder, you will see the majority of the files here have the .dat file format. These are general data files. They can be opened with any text editor, and the majority of data files are in a very readable format. However, each data file typically has a unique structure and/or layout. For example, the timecyc.dat file is the file which handles San Andreas weather, so the sky colors, overall draw distance, ambient lighting, and so on. The weapon.dat file is the file which handles weapon stats, so weapon ranges, damage, bullet spread, and more. If we compare both of these files, they look completely different from one another, and this is the case for most of the data files. However, as you can see, they're typically well documented and laid out, so they're fairly easy to read and change. One data file to be aware of is gta.dat. This is the file which tells the game's engine about some of the files it needs to load, like IMG archives, IPL files, and IDE files. It's good to know about this file because some mods may want to add new files to the game. Like maybe a mod will want to add a new IMG archive to the game, or maybe a new IPL file. But for the game to know it needs to load those files, the mod author will have to list their new files inside gta.dat. Also, handling.cfg is basically the data file for vehicle handling, but it just uses the config file format. It can be edited with a text editor, and like I said, it's basically the same as all the other data files that end with .dat. Data files, including handling.cfg, can be loaded with ModLoader. So for instance, if you were to copy any .dat files from here, edit them and put them in ModLoader, ModLoader will load your edited .dat files instead. ModLoader has a great feature for data files, and that's the ability to merge data files together from separate mods. So I'll give you a fairly basic example Let's say you download a mod which gives CJ dual Desert Eagles once he reaches Hitman level. The mod changes the weapon.dat data file to achieve this, and it'd have to change the line which handles the Desert Eagle at Hitman level, which I've highlighted here. Well, what happens if you wanted to download another mod which maybe gives CJ dual miniguns? This mod would also need to alter the weapon.dat data file. So before mod loader, you'd have to either pick which mod you'd prefer to use, or if you knew what you were doing, you'd take the changed lines from one weapon.dat and put them into a single weapon.dat, which wasn't very user friendly and can be hard to keep track of. However, if you have mod loader, it can merge the data files together with the changes, so you don't have to do any of that. So if you install your dual Desert Eagle mod in mod loader, and also install your dual minigun mod in mod loader can actually tell which lines in each mod have been changed, and will merge the changes together. So mod loader basically reads the two weapon.dat files from each mod, sees what's different between them, and tells the game to use the modified Desert Eagle line and the modified minigun line from both mods. So not only can mod loader merge data files, but it can also actually read individual lines from data files in basic text files. This is called README files reading. So I'll explain what I mean and why it's called that. Mods usually come with a file called README text files, and this type of file will contain installation instructions, mod credits, and so on. So before mod loader, modders were aware people would typically install multiple mods, and if their mod replaced a data file commonly used by other mods, it'd often be easier to just tell people in the README file to add or change a specific data line themselves to avoid mods conflicting. It wasn't the most user friendly, but it was the only way to avoid conflicts with different mods. However, mod loader makes this so much easier. Instead of having to provide data files with a mod or tell a user to add lines themselves, mod loader can read valid data lines directly from a text file such as the README file. This is why this feature is called README files reading. So for example, if I install my little mod I made into mod loader along with the readme.txt that comes with the mod, mod loader will actually read the data line directly from the README file and will tell the game to use it, instead of the user having to place the line into their gta.dat file. If I go in game, you can see the mod is indeed working. All the mod did was place a lamppost in the middle of Grove Street, if you're wondering. This feature is very handy, and it works with the data files that are most likely to require such uses. The data lines can be in any text file too. It doesn't have to be named README either. One more quick thing about mod loader that you might have noticed. Inside the README file, you might have noticed the data line says the tjgmvideo.ipl file should be placed inside the data maps LA folder. However, with mod loader, it doesn't need to be in the correct path. So, as you can see here, as long as the IPL file is inside mod loader will still get the game to load the IPL file despite it not being in the data maps LA folder. This is good to know, as you'll probably download a mod and possibly think it's set up wrong, but it's not. Mod loader handles the files just fine like this. Okay, let's cover 3 more file types really quick that are fairly common when modding San Andreas, and then we'll get back to installing more mods. Files ending with .col are collision files. These are mostly located in the game's IMG archives, and they can contain multiple collision models in them. If it wasn't obvious, collision models are what keep dynamic objects such as vehicles and characters from going through the game's visual models. When you crash into this specific palm tree model, you're crashing into this collision model. When you shoot at this specific lamppost model, you're shooting this collision model. Most of the visual models in the game have a collision model stored in a collision file. Typically, the model stored in this file is a more optimized version of the visual model you actually see in-game. Two more things to know about collision files. These files also contain the models for the stencil shadows you see throughout San Andreas for some map objects and all of the vehicles in the game. Along with that, collision models also define the type of material the model is. Different material types alter things like the sound of the player's footsteps on that model. And whether dynamic grass spawns there or not. COL files can be loaded with ModLoader. So for instance, if you were to extract any COL files from here, edit them, and put them in ModLoader, ModLoader will load your edited COL files instead. Next, .ifp files. IFP files are the game's animation files, and they can contain multiple animations. Most of the game's animations are located in the game's anim folder, located in ped.ifp, and the two IMG archives, which contain more IFP files. Some of the animation files are also stored in the GTA 3.img archive. IFP files can be loaded with ModLoader. So for instance, if you were to extract any IFP files from here, edit them, and put them in ModLoader, ModLoader will load your edited IFP files instead. And lastly, the San Andreas audio files. So in the audio folder of San Andreas, there's two folders called SFX and Streams. Both folders are filled with files that have no file format on PC. However, on PS2, they have the .pak file format. These are basically the same, despite the lack of file format on PC. We call these files packages, and they're basically just another type of archive, similar to IMG archives and TXT archives, which you've seen before, except these only contain audio files. These files can be opened and read with the San Andreas Audio Toolkit. The files in the Streams folder is where you'll find the radio audio, police scanner audio, ambient audio, and cutscene audio. This audio uses the .ogg file format. The files in the SFX folder is where you'll find banks, and in these banks you'll find all of the game's other audio, so vehicle sounds, gun sounds, pedestrian audio, and so on. This audio uses the .wav file format. So before ModLoader, there was a bit of an issue with modding San Andreas audio files. When you replaced audio inside one of these packages, if the audio file was bigger than the original file it replaced, the game audio would get completely messed up, usually when raining. Listen to this. According to Link 2012, the author of ModLoader, this issue is caused by the fact that the game uses a static sound buffer of an arbitrary size, which is stored in bankslot.dat. Don't worry, I don't know what it means exactly either, but this is how I understand it. The game is told a specific audio file, or files, is meant to be a certain size. However, when the audio file, or files, aren't that size, it bugs out and causes issues. There's probably more to it, but that's the gist of it. If a modded audio file was bigger than the original game's audio file, it'd cause bugs. This really limited mod authors in what they could do, especially if you wanted to use longer audio files. However, with ModLoader, this issue is fixed. Instead of the sound buffer being static, ModLoader makes the sound buffer dynamic, and the size of the file is determined when the audio file is requested by the game. Audio package files can be loaded with ModLoader. So for instance, if you were to copy any audio package files from here, edit them and put them in ModLoader, ModLoader will load your edited audio package files instead. However, ModLoader has yet another trick up its sleeve. ModLoader can also load sound files outside of the packages. However, they must follow the same file structure as they do inside the package. For example, if we wanted to replace the gunshot sound of the sniper rifle, the sniper rifle sound is in the GENRL package, and within that package, it's located in the bank called bank_137. And the sound file itself in this bank is sound_028.wav. So if you wanted to use a different sound file for the sniper and load it with ModLoader, the folder structure inside ModLoader should look like this, exactly as it did in the package. ModLoader will use this sound file instead of the original one located in the general package. And that's basically it for ModLoader and file types. ModLoader also has options for profiles, but chances are you won't use them. I might cover it in a future video, but you now know the necessary things you need to know about ModLoader and how it works. Okay, that is finally all, and I know you're absolutely itching to get back to actually installing mods. So that's exactly what we're going to do in the next episode. So thank you for watching this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.